Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I have to be on the right spot. Apparently, it's better lit, but I look the same in the camera. Thank you all for coming. Another talk, another Agora talk. Today, we're going to talk about redefining safety in the film industry. It's a very crucial subject, and we have very important people to talk about it, which is fascinating. This talk is co-organized and supported with TalkSafe, and it's supported by Creative Europe Media Desk Greece. I would like to call briefly Anna and Andrea from Media Desk to come and say just a couple of words. Thank you, Anna and Andrea. Please join us.
Thank you, Thanos. You look great under every light. You don't have to worry. And maybe in another context, this comment would have been a sexist one. And so this is a good start for our discussion, because I'm sure that it's a topic that you will refer to. I'm Anna Kasmati. I'm from the Greek Media Desk, and today we are together with my colleague from Italy, Andrea Coluccia, from the Italian desk of Bari. I'm managed under Cinecittà. The Greek Media Desk is managed under ECOMED, or Hellenic Audiovisual Hellenic Film and Audiovisual Center, sorry. We are a rather new organization right now after our merge. And I would like to welcome you in this talk, because I think it's very important. The Creative Europe program in general thinks that sustainability, inclusion, and equality, are horizontal issues and have to be addressed. And that's why it's important to talk about it. And this is a great opportunity that Agora gives us, and thank you very much for this. I give the floor to Andrea just for another brief welcome, and we are looking forward for your discussion.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, the festival, for this the opportunity. I would like to say hi to the speakers, and I hope you will enjoy the talk. Bye.
Fantastic. Thank you both. I will pass the floor now to our moderator, lovely Marion Schmidt. And yes, let's all learn something, especially the men who, as I can see, are overwhelmingly represented here today by 4 of us. Thank you.
No? Okay, you hear me? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here in this room, taking breaks from your meetings, and also leaving the sunshine outside. First and foremost, as a returning moderator and very happy guest in Thessaloniki, I would like to thank the 2 of you, Angeliki and Thanos, for having us and for making the space for us to talk about a topic that is dear to all of us, and I hope also concerns many that are in this room. I also would like to thank the Creative Europe Desk and you, Andrea and Anna, for the support to this panel. My name is Marion Schmidt. I'm a cultural manager and consultant, as is written on the screen, and I do several things that are all related to the ecosystem of filmmaking, I would say, and the ecosystem of mostly documentary filmmaking. And I'm here representing the initiative TalkSafe. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But before I go there, first I need to let you know that we have decided to run this panel a little bit differently. So it will be more of a conversation than me moderating. And actually, wonderful Elena Christopoulou, who is sitting on the rear left, is this left of that sofa, is going to take over some parts of the moderation and then throw the ball back to me. And wonderful Kesmet El Sayed to my right, who's also a returning panelist and guest to the Agora and the festival here, and who had also her film screening last night as a producer, is going to come in and will introduce herself right after me. And then to my left, Nora Philippe, from the head of program of Eurodoc, who has her premiere tonight, right after this panel. You will have to run out to the cinema immediately. Will come in whenever you feel also you have your contribution. So we are playing this quite open, And we will also open up to all of you very soon in this conversation. Of course, nobody will be pressured to share, but we'd love your contribution. So why are we here? We have this hashtag DocSafe initiative that is mentioned in the description of the panel and also on the screen. And I would like to start by giving you a bit of a background information about what DocSafe is and how it came about. It was initiated by Jane Mode, who is an international consultant and also chief editor of the fund The Wickers. She's sending her warm regards. She's currently in Geneva, not flying this year. That's also one of the reasons why she didn't make it here this year. Who wrote an article that was published in the documentary magazine of the IDA, because she felt she could no longer be silent about the many abuses that were reported to her by filmmakers that she encountered all over the world. And in this article, she, with permission of the individuals that she was anonymously quoting, shared some testimonies that told tales of abuses of power within training initiatives, mentor-mentee relationships, in festival settings, in drink situations, etc. And her conclusion was that there is a lack of accountability structures in this community that calls itself an industry, where we oftentimes, including myself, of course, think that we are the better people because we are friendlier and nicer, and we are documentary filmmakers, so, or those who support documentary filmmakers. So therefore, we want to believe that we have a set of values that contributes to a better world that is better for everyone who lives in it. And from there on, it was interesting, an interesting impromptu reaction that around 40 representatives of different organizations came out to say that they would be interested in continuing this conversation. And the initiative went under the umbrella of the Documentary Association of Europe, that I am a co-founder and former co-director of. And we brought this group of people together in 1.5 years ago. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit because otherwise I'm going too detailed in the technical aspects of this. So this group that was quite, it was international, and it was representatives of festivals, markets, training initiatives, but also producers that were from parts of the world where structures don't exist in the same way that they maybe do in places like Europe, but they do represent filmmaking communities in their geographies. And we started discussing and sharing resources and best practices, realizing that actually we are all facing the same challenges, and that we still have a long way to go to come to also a common understanding, actually, what we're talking about when we're talking about safety. One of the things that we mention in the introduction to this panel is that this term, a safe space, is incredibly overused. Like, everyone claims to have one, wants one, creates one, but what does it actually mean? I mean, I could say now this is a safe space, but maybe it's a safe space for me, but it's not a safe space for you, or it's not a safe space for Elena. Or in a minute, someone would do something that would immediately make this not a safe space for me anymore. So I'm using this example to say that I think in the context of the conversation around safety and around power dynamics, we use a lot of words without giving them any meaning, without kind of together exploring what we actually mean when we're talking about them. And to close my introductory words and then to hand over to Elena and you, Nora, first, I think we were invited by the Durban Film Art Institute, who were part of, in South Africa, who were part of the initiative from the very beginning, to have a 3.5-hour-long think tank, to curate a 3.5-hour-long think tank in Durban, in which we, for the first time, in the context of DocSafe, started dismantling, or looking at, not dismantling, but looking at into the different dimensions of what safety can mean. Because oftentimes when we think safety, we think about physical safety. Safety that is only infringed if someone pushes me, if someone harasses me, if someone touches me. However, what about other forms of safety? What about cultural safety, political safety that becomes increasingly more important in the world that we're currently living in? Power dynamics, I mean, very, very prevalent in the spaces that we are navigating as filmmakers or as industry representatives, and the relationships that we have, the often blurred relationships. What about institutional violence? The idea that there are bad deeds in an institution when actually the perpetrating systems are structural, and therefore dismantling them needs a common action and not a this is just a bad person kind of approach. So a report emerged out of that, and we brought the same idea to Doc Leipzig, where we ran the same think tank around the same themes with a completely different set of participants. To also get different perspectives, like where in Durban we had mostly representatives from the global majority that were part of the think tank. In Leipzig it was mostly a European audience and a European feedback room. I'm currently finalizing, or we are currently finalizing this report, and we have now gotten a mandate from the initial stakeholder organization to try and develop DocSafe into a place that supports and collaborates with existing organizations in our ecosystem to further this dialogue, to advocate on these topics, to maybe bring out trainings and other guidelines that can inform the frameworks that we're working in. And I've already spoken far too much, and I think we can go into some of the details of this much, much later. And I think, Elena, if I'll hand over to Nora immediately, unless you would like to react to it.
It's me. With a question, or shall I just go?
Just
okay. All right. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's true that it's interesting day and combination of things today, because I'm here as the director of a training program which is called EuroDoc. Our office is in Paris, but we are EU funded. We operate in a pan-European and international area. But I'm also a film director, and I'm screening for the first time a film that I filmed over 10 years in the States, also in France, and definitely the challenge of safety essentially for my protagonists. And while there's a digital campaign right now and lots of very nasty online comments while we are premiering today, it's also safety. Actually, it's just these are challenges that never really end. So I'm like really living it. So I must say that the DocSafe initiative has been very important in our ecosystem. Although it's not, an official label or an official organization, the moment it was created and the moment I was invited and people, connected to EuroDoc were invited, we actually added, hashtag DocSafe to our presentations, to our community rules, making, our participants, tutors, mentors, aware that it exists and that we are part of this reflection. So at EuroDoc, we train producers, independent documentary producers, and so the question of safety, so be it physical, mental, would say, political and cultural, are definitely something we tackle and that we sometimes cannot control. We have usually about 30 different citizenships in the room, from all 5, 6, depending on how you count, 6 or 7 continents, the Caribbean included. Tutors and mentors are, also come from very different. It's a very multicultural setting. So again, the definition of safety, varies from an area, a language, a cultural area to another. But what I wanted to say is that now I came to EuroDoc in March 2022, and since in 3 years we've tried to implement some community rules, some also changes in the way that we teach or train, and also we've changed the way that we train the trainers. And we've created also a number of initiatives that try to address the topic. So we've created community rules that we state and read together at the beginning of every session. We prioritize on-site sessions. We also have lots of online trainings. So we also say that the community rules, of course, concern both on-site and online settings, and it's about, again, like how to behave, how to report something, and also how to, we try to send a message that it's a collaborative document, a set of community rules that can evolve and can be redefined, as often as it's necessary. And it's shared, it's shared many times during the over the year, because our program is annual, so it runs from March to October. Then we also hired a number of people who did like anti-racist trainings for our cohort, and also for our educators, for our trainers, who are usually people from the industry. They are not trained, they're not professors or professional educators. They are actually people coming from the industry who just share their expertise and their knowledge. So of course it adds a layer of complexity. And then I think what's really important to mention is that in 2023, also because thanks to different European quotas, we were able to welcome more producers from the Global South, and also through the Caribbean Eurodoc initiative, we welcome more Caribbean producers. We created an initiative called BIPOC Eurodoc, which is a group where BIPOC producers, so BIPOC stands is an acronym that means Black Indigenous People of Color, which basically is about producers from underrepresented communities and backgrounds from all over the world who can join the task force and have specific resources, specific events that are dedicated to them, and that they can also curate, inviting the rest of the cohort. And it's a program that happens on site, online, and also at festivals. There are delegations, and now the group is becoming more and more visible, and it sends a message that is still, surprisingly unusual in the European context, and that is definitely an empowering tool. So the fact that there's a BIPOC task force at Eurodoc sends a message to the mentors and tutors we invite, sends a message to the industry guests that we invite, and of course to the participants. It's also I would like to end with that note, because again, like I'm talking about solutions we're trying to invent, not definitive solutions. But it's also really interesting how to see that some BIPOC producers will be afraid to join the task force because it could also like minimize them or put them apart. They want to remain discreet on their identities. So all of these dynamics show how you can feel fragile and of course easily discriminated in the system we are operating in. Kesmat also was active in the BIPOC Eurodoc task force, and we are very happy with the results. We lack funds, of course. It's extremely difficult to fund, and I must say that having a coordinator who's also a scholar, a creator, Leonard Cortana, working relentlessly on this initiative has just literally changed the game. But we feel also that institutionally it's still considered sometimes a bit very, very necessary and very acknowledged by producers across our cohorts, but also institutionally sometimes difficult to understand. But we've had great feedback. Like we had Europeans who didn't even know about the BIPOC acronym saying, I was a bit suspicious beforehand, and now I see the result. I see the delegations. I see the work being done. So I really hope that we have the means to continue this work.
I would like to react to this very briefly before I come to you, Kismet, to say that two things. First, I think what you just shared shows that if a leader decides to do things differently, step by step, and I know the many challenges that you have been facing in this work and also the many hurdles that you still have in front of you for that's when things can change. And then the other thing is that what runs through all of the reports and all of the feedback that we have received is this lack of resources, because one of the things that we cannot forget that we are demanding changes from institutions that oftentimes themselves are really, really stretched for funding and operate with extremely small teams who don't also necessarily have the extra capacity that it takes to react to or be there for people in case of harm being done. So thank you for this for now, and I'm turning to you, Ismet. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this very, very important, safe sofa. I want to start by saying that Marion was one of the first safe spaces for me moving to Germany, and also one of the very great supporters for a newcomer from Egypt to start operating in a new space like Germany. And also I want to thank Nora for starting for really opening her arms to the BIPOC initiative, which started the year I was a cohort. So it's a very special initiative that I'm very happy to be part of, and I see the eagerness and the energy that everyone is putting into this platform on a volunteer basis. It's really unbelievable. They are doing events at every festival and putting in a lot of time, and it's all not compensated. So I'm an Egyptian producer. I work and operate in a very hostile environment. The region where I work is a region that has a lot of unsafe elements, physical, mental, political, cultural. So we have the four unsafe, and still people are operating. And I think people are taking a lot of risk to make films in these regions, and they are not acknowledged for doing that. So there is a lack of awareness to the level of risk that is taken by anyone working in this region. So this is something that I would like to bring to the table and for us to discuss how we can address this. And I think with safety, it starts with awareness. People have to first understand what are the risks they're taking, what does it mean, and then once they are aware, they need to know what to do about it and how to navigate that. And I think in both cases there is not enough information on what is wrong. You probably I personally have moments where I'm doubting myself, although maybe I have much more awareness than other people. And I come to the conclusion that whenever I feel something is wrong or bad, it is. So that's my gut feeling, is my compass in a way. And I would also encourage people to also listen to their feeling and what they think is not right, and in that way also to start communicating, to find someone to share this experience with. And I think that this is something we do naturally among friends. Whenever someone feels something wrong, they call their best friend and tell them. And we actually, in the context of filmmaking, we live in this world more than we live with our friends, more than we live with our family. So we need to find this safe network that we can share with, and then we need to have something after that then brings out protocols that these problems are addressed. So some sort of process. I think that's enough for now.
Thank you so much. I have some questions. I would really like, because you speak about awareness and it's one of the most important things, but I have this sense that some people in the audience, and perhaps some people that might watch this later, we don't know yet, might not be aware of what the physical, mental, political and cultural aspects of safety are. And I would like you in particular, because you have this experience on the ground in Egypt, to perhaps share, in Germany, sorry, thank you for that, a specific example for each, if that's okay, to get a picture.
Yeah, I mean, in Egypt, of course, it is, you work within a context that you could get easily politically prosecuted. So, and documentary is a space where the government always wants to control what is being documented. So people can even be taken from the street if they even have a mobile camera and they're shooting something in the street. So to that level, there is, unsafety. And this is shared in a lot. Egypt in the region might be the safest. We don't have a war going on, and then we are talking about region where there is war, there is a lot of trouble. So of course it is so difficult to document your life or your circumstances. I mean, there are areas where people are documenting their daily war, and these stories are not really reaching. They're not being produced because they're not getting funded. A clear example are Palestinian stories. So we have all these levels of hostility and not allowing these people to have the same footing or the same environment. In Germany, surprisingly, of course, as an Arab, I also feel that you are constantly being judged. You are also labeled, and your country comes before anything. You are categorized as a person. So the moment you start speaking, already people assume your bias or assume what you're going to say. So I think this categorization is also creating this kind of very hostile environment. So, in a way, for me, the reality is that there is very little spaces where it's not hostile. So, yeah.
And you reminded me of something, if I may add, that we were watching today, I think it was either today with the Docs in Progress or yesterday with the Pitching Forum, and there was this, I think it was today, this family, Algerian immigrants in France, and because it was the grandparents who came to France and they had this insecurity, even though the grandmother was 60 years a French citizen, she would always carry this insecurity of not feeling safe in this country and what will happen with her papers, and she will get deported. So the son grew up in this fear. That is being passed on ancestrally. Although, he was born a French citizen, his daughter and son also, and you could see the threads. And I'm mentioning this because this also creates a constant threat and sense of unsafety, this hostility that you don't know where it's gonna come from. I don't know if this makes sense. Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense because it's inherently connected to the reality. I mean, of course, on a much broader scale, connected to this industry as this industry and how it functions, and a lot of the things that you were saying, Kismet, that when you were talking about political safety, it was political safety mostly in connection with state and society, but you can bring it to the level, I wouldn't call it below, but to another level that is the institutional level, where political safety or the lack thereof can be connected to institutional violence. That means, for instance, a person cannot express their beliefs or cannot express their political position out of fear of being fired or sidelined. But then in the reality of the filmmaking community, we are also talking about a lot of film workers, producers, directors who are living in very precarious setups already. So all of a sudden it becomes an act where you're debating your livelihood if you're questioning the positioning, the political positioning of a film festival, for instance, because you don't necessarily want your film or your presence to be seen as complicity with a position that you are not sharing. But then when you're voicing this, then you might be kicked out of this community or also reprimanded by this institution, meaning that you would lose the income that you need to survive. So that's a very clear example. And the other thing that you were referring to, Kismet, is the funding. I mean, the power imbalance that is connected to who makes the decision about what in these funding setups, and how does this trickle down. And this is for individuals, but I mean, very much so also in particular now for instance, training initiative like yours, Nora, right?
Yeah, I could add something. Again, I don't think that, Black people should educate white people about racism, or women should, take that time and energy to educate men about sexism. So, but yeah, so thank you, Gasmat, for taking some time to describe in a nutshell what is your daily experience in this film industry. So I just wanted to underline something. Let's talk about this title, Redefining or Defining Safety in the Film Industry. I mean, people who don't feel safe will not let you know. I mean, because it's, I mean, if you're in a context where you don't feel safe, I mean, it won't be safe to say that you're not safe. So you first need to, I mean, this is very basic, but this needs to be reminded. So your first task is to create a space, a channel, whatever, a platform, tools where things can be said. And yes, it can be, especially when you're an institution, when you're, a set of, white people having power. Yes, things that you didn't see before will appear, and it's your responsibility to change things very rapidly. Otherwise, you create more trauma. So, yeah, defining safety, but just really creating spaces where a conversation can happen is crucial, and it happens very, very seldomly. So again, this is not just another panel. This is a way also, again, to really, create spaces that really lack or missing or are tokenized. Or very artificial. I also wanted to say that it's also about, exactly as you said, Kasmat, it takes an awful lot of time to authorize yourself to say, yeah, I'm unsafe. Like, I'm unsafe, and it's not my fault. It's not because I'm weak. It's not because I'm what X, Y, Z, but it's actually because I'm being abused. I'm being, and it's a journey. Like, it takes a lot of time, and it's not a nice acknowledgement. But then, yeah, and I had this experience last week. We were in a very aggressively sexist environment at Eurodoc, and I as a manager, I was really responsible of protecting my team, who was completely female, far younger, and who did not completely have the tools, who were completely coming back to me like, what we are experiencing, is it sexism? Like, am I allowed to think that we are treated differently because we're women? I said, yeah. this is tragic, but yes, this is what we are living. And it's not easy to say. It doesn't alleviate the pain and doesn't, repair the harm. But yeah, so putting words on things is something that really, really matters.
And I think this reminds me of something that we all wanted to touch upon and stress, that this is a conversation for us to show towards institutions on what can be done. So we're starting a conversation to push for implementations, whether these are protocols, these are safe spaces, community guidelines, because we have different levels of safety. There are the subject safety, there are the employee safety, there are the collaborator safety, there are power abuses in. So if it starts from above, it may, hopefully, one day start to impact all the different facets of the manifestations of threat or abuse or unsafety in general. So I would like you all to keep this in mind. And this begs a question for me. Do we have examples like BIPOC Eurodoc of institutions or organizations from your experience, Marion, and from yours, because I'm sure you've collaborated, and I don't know from your end, Gesmat, if you've been approached or you can approach organizations like this, where stuff is get done, to put it very simply.
I just want to say something before that, maybe about like surveys that happen after events. It's become a normal thing that you get a survey, and then you don't feel like whatever you write makes a difference anymore. So I'm wondering about these surveys. And also, I'm thinking maybe, of course, you want to make it anonymous so people say everything, but at the same time, you really want to have somebody to talk to. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just bringing it out there because already the concern for feedback is there, but it's maybe not effective anymore, or these channels need to be, there needs to be another step after, where people, for example, maybe leave their contact, or there is a contact person that you can reach if you really feel that there is a big issue that you can, you need to address. So I don't know.
I would love to come back to this, and I'm happy to share more good practices that we have encountered, but I think this gives me the perfect moment to actually come to you, Elena, and to your role that you have defined for yourself after an experience in the film industry where you worked for many years, I don't even know how many, including for this festival, and your decision to train as a holistic therapist that is now mostly working with people that are in or from the film industry, and the decision of like a very, very clear and close to all of us example, which is the decision that the Agora team and the festival took this year to introduce the decompression room, to have you on site also as a person to talk to, and also the mediation journey. And I would like to use this moment to invite you to talk a little bit about your own experience and your practice and maybe your journey, as much as you would like to share it.
Okay, thank you. And also Agora's initiative to have this talk.
Exactly.
Which is where it all started. Okay, so I've been working as a film festival staff member for almost 2 decades, as well as a film journalist / critic, one of the few women in the industry there. And it's been a bumpy ride. It was a very costly affair for me, although I loved this job a lot. I studied it, I chose it, you know. Very rarely, I think, people get into the film industry because someone is pressing them, you know, you need to become a doctor or a film producer. So it's, I think I mentioned this because it's doubly a disappointment or a bitterness or whatever, I will think of a better word, when things don't pan out, because it is a toxic environment, despite what many people think. And it had a toll on my mental and physical health. And at some point I decided that I was already seeing various manifestations of things that I didn't like, whether it was harassment, whether abuse of power. There were many, many manifestations. You've mentioned quite a few among you. And at some point, due to various personal reasons, I decided, okay, this is the time I need to make a shift in my life. I need to prioritize my health, my mental, physical, emotional well-being. So I started studying various things. I haven't stopped studying. I started 13 years ago, and it hasn't stopped. I don't think it ever will. And at some point, I realized that I need to officially leave the industry. It took a bit of time for me to get back. I almost suffered PTSD for a few years. It was like a very hot-to-touch environment for me. But now, coming back, I feel like I'm at home. I feel like I'm, among people that I love and that I empathize with. I mean, I totally get whatever. I might not be a film producer, never have been, but I have talked to so many of you, and I can understand all the stress-related issues that come out of it. And what we decided with the Agora this year, it's been a long time coming, but this is the first opportunity that we really had to make it work. We created the compression room, which is a room done in the Film Museum where you can, rest and relax it's from 10 to 5:30. There is gentle music, there is meditations, and we have morning and evening zones for the Agora participants where I guide you through physical movement, through meditations, to just either energize and get going, or take the day off and relax after a huge day, because it's a brutal schedule most of you have here. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. A comment on the last thing you said, the brutal schedule goes back to what you were saying in the beginning. It's like awareness and sharing. Because I think we have the tendency to normalize. And I would like to share an example. This year, the ITFA Academy decided to have a few people, including myself, at tables for people just to come and talk. So there was no agenda. And it was all people that have been part of the industry for a long time, but are not funders or in any other kind of, I can give you something, you take something from me position. And it was in this loud space. I mean, people who have been to ITFA know the venue, so there's a lot of people sitting from morning to night at tables talking to each other, and it's loud, and there's a lot of background noise and coming and going and so on. And there's this person who comes to my table and sits down and starts pitching her project. And while doing this, shaking. And at some point, I'm like, hey, I'm Marian, who are you? Because we didn't have, and then I said, this is a very stressful environment, isn't it? It's very loud. I have already a headache. And immediately she relaxed. And we just had a conversation. We didn't talk about the project anymore. And we spoke about the fact that we are normalizing a space and a setup. I mean, I hate the word normal. But we are normalizing it. We are pretending that this is how it is supposed to be. I mean, it's like producers who are basically telling me that every single producer. Just this morning I had a conversation with someone who mentioned that they and all their producer friends are constantly dancing on the edge of a burnout, and that's not how it is supposed to be. And it's important to say that and to be like, it's not okay. That's not. It doesn't have to be like this.
And you remind me what Kesmat was telling us earlier before we met here about the normalization of risk. And I would like you I'd like to invite you to share a bit more about this, because it's very important, I think.
Yeah, I was just sharing how it is normal that we just continue to live under this hostile environment, that we take for granted things, that we have a higher tolerance to taking risk, because it's our normal everyday, like we cross the street and you know, you could be hit by a car very easily. So it's, but we still do it, you know, it's we have a higher tolerance for this, and in that way, of course, we forgot that, and we are it's like the boiling frog syndrome, where you don't realize you're being you're inside being cooked. So of course there is so much awareness needed, and also this is for filmmakers, producers, but also for subjects. I mean, very rarely do we communicate to the subjects we are filming the consequences of what we are doing, and how the film will be screened, or what this would mean. And in that way, it becomes very problematic. And these are people that are completely out of the industry also. They are people left behind, and they don't know what to do now that we own their image and it's circulating everywhere. So this is also another level, and also they also take a risk in this, because the director is the one who's creating the vision of the film, and in a way we have a responsibility towards these subjects, and it's a really big topic as well, and there is absolutely no channel to address this.
And you were saying not only channel, but there's no one to go to.
Yes.
After this.
For sure, no way to address any of this. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can talk about that for a little while. Regarding initiatives, so there's an ongoing conversation about, like, has Me Too ever hit France or not? Like, we still really don't know, but still, there are free trainings that are actually mandatory trainings in the film industry in France for any producers or managers in production company. Now these trainings about sexual harassment in the workplace and gender-based violence, these trainings are very well made, and they are mandatory. So they're also connected to incentives. So the French National Film Fund makes it mandatory to follow the training. Otherwise, you cannot actually ask for a grant at the CNC. And also several public-funded training, important training initiatives like AFDAS, national organizations, actually offer to anyone in the cultural industries, a free training on the topics, and especially it's on the legal side, and it's extremely efficient. So on that, so it's kind of changed the game on so many, on so many dimensions in France. Another initiative that we've just carried out, it's not completely finalized. So this is about the PDF that I was sharing with you. We could share sort of a premiere of the document if it, yeah, exactly. So again, the BIPOC Eurodoc group invited Marion as Marion, but also DocSafe, to create a roadmap for markets and festivals, but also that welcome delegations, but also a roadmap for delegations, filmmakers, producers, and we are addressing in a very explicit way the question of safety. This was, and I'm happy to talk about it, and Marion, you will also want to share, I guess, the process, but it was very collaborative. So we had several meetings online with several representatives from festivals and markets. It was, unfortunately, 100% people who identify as women in the virtual room to design this roadmap, I must say so. And so we can have a little, it's still, we have to finalize it. It's going to be officially ready in a few days, but it was, it's 8-page long PDF that actually lists what should be done to welcome accordingly in safety, or to ensure, as far as possible, the safety of delegations. So maybe, Marianne, you also want to share a few things. I just wanted also to say we are operating in an extremely competitive sector. So even if you're, I mean, as an independent producer, you're in danger all the time. So the anecdote that you were sharing about ITFA, I mean, it's what we hear every day at Eurodoc. It's a very bizarre work and bizarre job. Like you're, you know, going to festivals, you're going to markets, you're waking up every day just to find the resources to pay yourself for the work that you're doing. So in terms of self-esteem and vulnerability, you couldn't imagine worse.
And by extension, thank you so much for saying it this explicitly, Nora. And of course, the way we did this industry has been designed fosters that in a situation where sometimes it almost seems as if the focus on the filmmaker without whom, and producers without whom this whole ecosystem wouldn't exist, has shifted towards sustaining the ecosystem that is actually around it, and it's explicit actually in the way that the resources are being still divided in many places, and in the way that decision makers that we now like to call industry representatives, because we think that this is nicer, are positioned actually, even when producers present themselves. And the fact that we are asking producers and filmmakers to continuously go through training, one training after another, but the vast majority, I mean, that's an example of France that doesn't exist in Germany, for instance, and in many other European countries that doesn't exist. And we are talking about industry representatives, including commissioning editors and others that have done mentoring or been invited to give feedback on panels, who have never gone and never been asked to go through any kind of training, which is actually one of the biggest demands that has come out of the conversations with DocSafe and also the two think tanks that we held. And there is, interestingly, also the feedback from individuals that are in these roles, that they would really encourage their organizations who would have the financial means, because they just need to reallocate accordingly. And now I'm talking about big institutions, to have these trainings and have people come, because those people exist that can give these kind of trainings. And this is also where DocSafe can be a mediator, in a sense. And one of the ways in which we also imagine, we as a collective, I think, imagine DocSafe to continue as a decentralized initiative. We have also consciously decided not to turn it into an organization, but to keep it as that decentralized an initiative as possible and as globally open as possible, is the example of the collaboration that happened between BIPOC Eurodoc and DocSafe, and which was also based on this shared belief that you don't have to revolutionize everything that you're doing within 24 hours. It's sometimes enough to adjust or to create a certain awareness inside of the way that you're doing things and how you're approaching them, to already change the reality that you're operating in, and the reality that people that are entering the spaces that you're creating already. This was not really a sentence, but I think you got what I mean. And the process was really, it was also again humbling to see first how many producers, mostly from the BIPOC Eurodoc group, were willingly putting in their time, again like free labor, to be part of this process and to share their intelligence and give their feedback. And then also how many of our colleagues from different organizations and festivals were following our call for contribution and participation, which makes me hopeful in times when there's sometimes not that much of a reason for too much hope, that there is this group that wants to be doing things differently and sees the need in the changes that we are advocating for.
And thank you for this, because I really wanted to stretch, at least for me personally. I might be naively optimistic, but what I see in the BIPOC Eurodoc initiative, because I was in one of those calls, and these are people that indeed put in their personal time and effort and energy. This is just an indication that people care, and that perhaps they have gone through it all, through the thick of it, And now they're presented with an opportunity, and they have the willingness as well to do something about it and share their experiences. And this brings me to the awareness that Kesmat is also highlighting, because this is a way of not direct, the opposite of direct, indirectly, yes, educating people by sharing stories and connecting with them. And I think most of the people in the group that you're mentioning have had themselves been, destroyed, or I don't know, this is not the right word, but harmed in a way, and they want to make something out of it, metabolize it.
Yeah, it's also about survival and self-defense. It's not only about educating the ecosystem. It's definitely about like self-organizing and finding, your own ways and your own communities to just, it's definitely, the group deals with self-defense.
I would like to come back to also the issue of the limited resources, because for example, a lot of people want to include therapy in their budgets, for example, or want to have resources to address trauma, or it's where are we going to find these resources? I mean, even Eurodoc, now there is a lot of excitement, everyone is working hard, but is it sustainable? That's also a question. I mean, I really like the model of DAY, for example, that it's a membership organization, so the members are paying to a certain level to be part of this network, and I wonder if there could be other examples of this membership where people are supported by the network and by the members. And also it's very difficult when it's when organizations grow very much and there's so many people, because you don't want to maybe share everything with everyone. You kind of want to have a core team that you talk to, and these are like well-trained therapists or people that understand or can really give you the right tools to address your issue or something of that sort. So I think we need to find the resources now, especially with what is happening and all this insecurity about funding films. How are we going to fund these types of institutions or advocate for it?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this in, Cassandra. I really think you're. I mean, several things that I completely agree, and I think it's. I guess we have to be creative and have different methods. I mean, while on the one hand there's this collective power to push funders, because you're saying it's like having this, for instance. This as in the roadmap and the participation in creating it is a form of self-defense. I completely agree. And I also agree it's an educative tool. However, I also would say it's a third one, because it creates more and more tools that are there for people to hold others accountable. Another example for this is at some point. I'm part of the Palestine Film Institute, and at some point more and more people reached out to the Institute asking for some kind of a guideline that they could fall back to, or that could give them supportive, indicative tools on how to deal with their relationship with festivals, with markets, etc. And this is not a tool that is limiting, because it does accept different forms of, actually encourages, accepts, and gives examples for different forms of resistance. And I think it was very, very helpful for people to navigate their reality, because they were they found themselves in a situation where they didn't really know what tools they should fall back to or how to hold people accountable. And the third example is that we are planning. First we had long conversations with DocSafe to have some kind of a label. We then realized that it would turn this into a watchdog with a lot of work and a lot of rules and the need for a lot of funding. So then we have now opted for the creation of more of a self-assessment form that again is built around the idea of, I mean, education, but also self-reflection on practices that are prevalent in the institution that I'm leading or that I'm part of. Again, as a tool to be like, and last thing on the funding bit, I think pushing, on the one hand, pushing for pushing the traditional funding streams, but then at the same time being very creative around where to and how to galvanize the resources that we have through collaborations, for instance, through membership schemes, like for instance, members of DocSafe isn't a legal entity yet. And those who can, which are mostly not European organizations because of the restrictive structures, have put some money, and we're not talking about a huge amount of money, some money into a pot, so we can have we can start the process of legally registering and having a bank account. I mean, to just be like also serving, to a certain extent, serving on this collaboration and pooling of resources, at least to start an organic process of becoming.
If we have a minute to talk about therapy and like protagonists, maybe, would love to. Because, so Kasma, you were talking about, like therapy in the budgets, and how to, let's say, normalize therapy in certain contexts. So yeah, to summarize, we have documentary filmmakers who are very often traumatized, dealing with traumatized protagonists or traumatizing events, footage, and it's not dealt with, for sure. So when we're talking about safety, we should definitely include, the mental health of teams, filmmakers, and also definitely protagonists, which is kind of a blind spot still. So we are trying right now in our training sessions to include access to certain reports that actually have been made in the States. They are becoming urgently more necessary, I guess, given the state of the country, and they are greatly made. It's the ITVS report about the complete guide on relationships between filmmakers and participants. And there's also a report called Safe and Secure. So these are incredibly helpful and pedagogical reports about how to invent consent protocols. And the industry has started using the concept of access, which to me is like the commodification of consent. I'm not really comfortable with the term access. You have access. Well, access is a thing, and indeed it can take the form of a contract or a life story, clearance. You can clear the rights of a life story, but still, access is about consent. So how do you take care of your protagonists in a setting where you're always uncertain about what will happen to your budget, to your crew, to your film, to how, I mean, a premiere at Sundance is not a, the kind of exposure you will have is not the same if you go to Sundance, if you go to Taiwan, if you go to FESPACO, and the impact on the protagonist will not be the same. You never know. You never know if you will sell your film to a platform, or if it will remain in a very confidential network. So how do you ensure that your protagonists know well what they are doing when they're like signing a release? It's something that I also struggled with my own film, because I just did not know. The only thing I knew, and nobody believed me, of course, I knew that I wanted to film on a very, very long period of time. So I had promised 10 years, but how can you promise and really design a correct protocol over 10 years, for instance? So that's something, no one should have like definitive answers, but it's true that it's the complexity of our jobs in the documentary field.
And you can't really promise. You can't control it. Such an unpredictable beast, I will call it. I just want to give a very short example of how the brain works, just to add to the complexity, because it's not complex enough. So the human brain does not distinguish between an actual threat and the perception of threat. So you might be a subject in the streets of Congo, and there's violence against you. The person behind the camera might be experiencing secondary trauma from this threat. His brain or her brain might be also perceiving the threat coming to them. You might be a programmer being exposed to hundreds of similar documentaries within a month. Your brain doesn't really tell the difference. And it creates a ripple effect because we then connect with each other with trauma or from trauma. And it's, I know I'm bringing the conversation down a bit, but it's a factor that needs to be taken under consideration as well in terms of therapy and how you can provide.
Actually, I think my smile was more connected to my real life experience of, I guess like at some point in different roles, and as a human being, as a consultant, as a colleague, as a friend, I had situations where encountered many moments in which trauma emerged in the person that I was talking to or the group I was working with or whatever, and I at some point had to also realize for myself the impact that it has on me, and take consequences from it. Like, and decide. Like I decided now to go through a specific training, so that I have the tools to be actually able to react better is the wrong word, but appropriate or safer, or I don't have the right word for it, when I feel like these situations occur, but to also be able to protect myself and take responsibility for my own well-being in such situation, which actually reminds me of something that the two of us talked about a lot in the preparation for this, that you started it, and it made me think a lot, the question of my own responsibility, the responsibility over my resources also, and you said it so much better, so maybe you want to talk to it, but the resources that I've built up from my self-sustaining tools that I'm creating for myself to keep the responsibility with me as well in situations that I'm entering. You can say it much better, I think.
Self-care?
It's one way, yeah. What did I want to say? I think it's a paradox that whatever happens socially, politically, globally, always trickles down to personal responsibility. And it's just not just a paradox, it's a very normal thing to happen. But I don't like it. But it has to start there because it ripples out as well. I was trying to think of what safety means in my own understanding of it. And the first thing that came to mind is that it's the absence of threat. This is what the brain works with. Whether it's an outer threat or an inner threat, because there are the outer, the literal threats, but our mind creates millions of threats momentarily. So one way to go about this is to turn the attention back to ourselves, because it is a very subjective definition. Each of us will have a very different definition of safety according to our past, our histories, our traumas, our supportive or lack of supportive environment. So I am advocating for personal definitions of things, and in this case, safety. So I will speak about myself. My antidote, my solution to feeling threatened is connection. I connect to myself. I have found ways to connect to my body, to my emotions, to my thoughts, to everything around me, whether it's people, environments. And this creates a personal, very personal and subjective feeling of safety, no matter what is going on around me. You might say I'm in my own world sometimes, but this is what I have needed to achieve for myself to be okay. So it comes back to what you said about self-protection. So when we do this work, if we have the ability, capacity, money, time, it's a very multifactored business. It's not. It doesn't go without saying that you will be able to do this, and a willingness, of course. It then ripples out. So you create this sense of safety for yourself, no matter where you are, and you become a safe space for others without endangering your own boundaries. Also, you become an inspiration, because you mentioned empowering tools, and this is very, very important to notice here. Your own standing, your own position, the way you treat yourself becomes like a goal that other people, and I'm saying this in a vulnerability hangover right now, because I know that I'm talking about myself, but I know this is the truth. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered.
I want to say that, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of sophistication and a lot of experience to reach that level. And I feel that a lot of people advance in life without going through any of that. And they harm in the opposite way. They are very harmful to others. And in that way, I think it should be mandatory that part of the training programs, or maybe the educational path to become a producer or a director, to have this as part of their curriculum. And I'm saying back to the point about awareness, like to be a proper director, you need to learn about consequences to your subjects, and you need to also be mindful of that. And to be a proper producer, you need to understand also your responsibilities. So I think it needs to be integrated into so much more than it is right now, and it shouldn't be a choice in a way that I try only because I had a traumatic experience that I go to self-help. No, it should start from the beginning, when people are still young and starting out. That this is, you know, there's a checklist. There is a you don't become there's an ethical code. You know, it needs to be that strong.
And because we're coming back to this again and again about the need for ethical codes, guidelines, protocols, training, tools. When we go to an institution and ask for something like this, they will ask back, okay, what is the need? Who is it for? What's the problem? How can I, in an ideal world? So I would like to invite all three of you to perhaps, because we have about 10 to 15 minutes left, and I would like to open it up to questions as well. If you could pick one or two needs that you would love to be addressed with these guidelines, protocols, from your own perspective, from where you're standing right now, what would those needs be?
It's very difficult, and I'm going to be terrible and not answer your question, but to keep in the same topic. Because I think it's about, many of these guidelines do exist. I think there's almost, in our industry, I would say there are almost no organizations anymore that don't have some sort of code of conduct or community guidelines. The problem, though, and this goes very much into the direction of what you're asking, is that, I mean, one person in one of our roundtables said, representing a festival, our market, we have this beautiful community guidelines, but in fact, they sit on our website, and none of our team actually knows what happens if someone violates them. Yeah.
But I can say something. I don't know. I don't want to make fun of green policy, but they are very successful because, like, they are everywhere and they're being implemented and supported. And it's about our environment, but we are not talking about our mental health. So I don't understand why it couldn't have that same status. So it's more important to be green than to be sane. So I really don't.
I really love that. I really love this discussion. But staying on this, it is the same topic in a way. Like the two are so interlinked because there are these guidelines and these words and these, but then they are not being implemented. And then what you were also saying before, Kismet, what comes after? What comes after? So what happens if there is an sexual abuse, for instance, that is in the gray zone of in where it's not legally, you can't legally punish it, or also the person that was abused is not wanting to share it and not wanting to go, but then they still need support. And then at the same time, how do you deal with the named perpetrator? And what is your responsibility towards them? What is your responsibility also to your colleagues that run similar initiatives? But how do you also don't overstep their personal legal safety? So there are all of these questions that came also up in all of our conversations in the context of DocSafe, and we need to find solutions that we can, or paths maybe, that we can agree on a broad coalition of institutions, and then so that we can advocate for them and for the implementation of those.
I mean, I'm not operating directly on this matter, but it's a matter of public policy. But I'm certain that if public funds in Europe, across countries, implemented mandatory trainings, I mean, the economic incentive is always, always works very, very well. So if you're not allowed, to ask for any grant if you haven't followed the training, which would not only be about gender-based violence, but also about racism and how to identify, prevent, and fight discrimination, that would be an incredible step forward, I believe.
Well, thank you very much. The time has run by so quickly, and I would like to invite people from the audience if they have anything to ask or comment on. This is a big conversation, so... please wait for the mic. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to the four of you and to the festival. This was a really, really rich and important conversation. I just want to share an experience that I had as a tutor in a program that Marion. I won't name it, but one of the partners is a fantastic IMS organization, and we were once we witnessed one of the participants being very violent to himself after obviously being violent to his partner in the film that he was working on. Not physically violent, but it was someone that you were talking about, people with a lot of suffering from within and that can harm others. But this person harmed himself in front of us all. And it was in a very complex context as well at the time of this training program. And IMS offered psychological support to all of us. We all went, nah, no problem. No need. But thank you. Didn't know you had that. That's fantastic. And then a few days later, I think we all called the person. So I think a lot of us ended up on the phone with this Danish psychologist that we never met for real. But I have to say, I did 3 sessions with him, and it was fantastic. It was really amazing because it was so traumatizing what we had experienced. And of course, this person was also followed, but if we could push our institutions or whatever to how our training programs could have funding for this kind of credits, whenever you need it, you have an hour,
First, I'm very happy to hear that this is how it unfolded, and I think there are places like Film in Mind, based in the UK, or Documentality, or what is it called? No, it's not coming to my mind. But there are people that, like Elena, where we also used to be in the work in the film industry, and have now started. Are trained as therapists, and which is not always necessary, I would say, at this. And I think one of the things that we would really like to do with DocSafe is to also have a catalog of people or a directory of people that can be addressed, that we also vet and have conversations with, where also people could contact one of us and then we could be like, maybe you want to talk too. One of the things that we have, because it was a discussion in Durban that came through really strongly, is that there needs to be a representation of different realities in people that do this therapeutical interventions, because the reality of people from in different life circumstances, geographies, etc., differs so much that sometimes maybe now I'm taking it away because I don't want a white German psychotherapist is not the right conversation partner for someone who has an experience that took place in a completely different context that is their own. So I think like kind of trying to identify different people where they are and making them visible as connection points is something that is very crucial in this.
You were thinking about Film in Mind and Rebecca Day, for instance.
Film in Mind, and there's film
mentality, yeah. But there are so few. I mean, there should be in every, national or regional film industry for sure.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Or Anna. Okay, we shared ours. It's okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Me and Andrea are working both in the Creative Europe Media Program, which in every 2 paragraphs it has the word competition, competitive, and I think all of us is considering this as an integrated part of what is our industry. But I was wondering instead of trying to define what does it mean to be black, what does it mean to be woman, non-binary, safety, maybe we should try by stealing also the title of our panel to redefine what is competition. Just throw the ball to the other side of the court. And if you think that this would be, in a very brief note by you, if you think that this is efficient or it's just something very optimistic and non-practical.
I'm not sure I understand. What's the question? Sorry.
Try to redefine what do we all mean by the word competition, or by the idea that this is our industry, this is how it works, these are how our things are working.
So in a way, because competition creates a feeling of unsafety,
yes,
perhaps we should go back there as the root.
It's going back to the awareness, and I think one of the things that comes to my mind in this competition question is what is reality and what is a learned behaviors, and what is law and what is tradition. And I think there's a lot of tradition in the way that our community industry works, and also in the ways that Europe is Eurocentric in relation to everyone who is not European. I mean, this is very simplistic for the matter of time. So I think I see where you're coming from, and it's a bit like also redefining what success means, because it's also many words that we are using. I would think that this would be a good thing to do, and have the tendency at the same time of thinking that it's maybe that it's not enough, because I think it's not all encompassing enough to rethink the ways in which we are also programmed to operate, many of us.
My only thought is that definitions create safety. What I was talking about earlier, my subjective definition of what competition, safety, success, love, happiness is, creates safety for me. I don't care about what it means to you. I mean, I care in a humane kind of way, but this is my reality. So by taking away my need for definition and putting it into the definition for competition, you're taking something from me. Why not define everything? in the way that creates safety. Because if you feel safe, and Andrea feels safe, and Martina feels safe, and Kesmat feels safe, then we create this, I'm going to use the word energy for safety as well.
We only have 1 minute. So I have to. I want to end on a positive note. That at the same time, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about maybe enough, I feel at least I have not mentioned it enough, is that this is of course not the equal playing field that we are walking and working in, and different levels. Like feeling safe is also a privilege that I have in very different ways. The many different privileges that I'm holding. That someone else might have. And I think that's also very strongly featured in the ways in which safety is defined and how I am privileged to define my own safety, because perhaps my own safety is going to massage twice a week. Like just giving a very simple example. And I can do this because I can afford it to go to safety. And I have food on my table, and then I have a loving community around me that supports me. And even if I financially fall, I know I have wonderful parents that would step up to support me. And whether I would ever make use of this or not, I know they exist. So I think that that's something that has to be underlying these conversations as well, that we are entering them from very different levels of privilege.
That needed to be said. Thank you. And I think that's all the time we have for today.
I'm afraid so, although it is very interesting. And thank you so much, Marion, Elena, Kesmat, and Nora for this fascinating discussion. I mean, whoever had questions, which I'm sure you have, you can always approach these lovely people at the drinks next door at 6:30, if you feel like it.
Nora's film is being presented at 5.
Is being presented at 5, yes.
In Stavros Tornes Theatre, for everyone who wants to.
Warehouse 1. And also, if you like, at 5, we have this fascinating new initiative between Thessaloniki Documentary Festival and Doc Leipzig called Doc Together. Please stay or come back to discover what it is about. Thank you so much for coming. Until next time.